What's up? Hawa. Pura vida. Hey, what's up, everybody? Yeah, it's been a long time since I've been live. How you guys doing? Thought it'd be a nice little surprise to go live today. Get back into my Kurimeo meditations series that I've been wanting to do. Just want to invite certain people up and have them talk and tell us their story, their history, their genealogy, their experience and all that. And I think I've been wanting to do this video for a while with a new he knows. And yeah, but certain things, we have to learn and understand a lot of things sometimes before we speak on certain things, because it might be taken the wrong way, it might be taken personal, it might be taken controversial. But we've grown a lot, we've learned a lot in this channel. It's been a long journey, and just want to show you a little bit of the history of certain tribes and that we never heard of. Like a lot of this is what I plan to get into a little bit more in our series Nations of the World. Really get into each tribe more in depth, and cover their history, their story too, not just always the one-sided, only the tribes that they always mention in mainstream. And a lot of tribes we don't hear. We've already gone over a couple of them in last couple videos, like the Nansatico. A lot of people didn't know they even existed, and things like the Chowan. I've done a video on the Chowan. So today we're gonna be looking into the Siouan tribes, the least very unknown, really, and they had a lot of influence. And believe it or not, a lot of people, without knowing, carry the blood of Siouan tribes, thinking they don't, thinking they might be something else, and that was on purpose. That happened to many tribal people, where they were getting misclassified, or that they had to go under certain tribes to be recognized as Indians, a general tag. Well, we talk about that today. And so we got a new, let me go ahead and turn on my camera just to say hi to everybody. Hey, what's up, everybody? So hey, hey, let them know, man. How you doing, man?
Nah, man, just making it through the day. What's going on with you, brother?
Doing good. So, I met a long time back, actually. Like when we started this the whole YouTube thing. It was like some back chats and the hangouts when we had we just first started in this community, and I met a lot of good brothers. New was one of them, brothers and sisters. And he was learned a lot about things tribes I never even heard of, like Saponi, Catawba. You don't really hear about these tribes when you're reading about Native American, so-called Native American history that much. And you always kind of get the five civilized tribes, or the Iroquois nations, the Iroquois Confederacy, nations. So like in general. So there's a lot more of the tribes, apart from the Algonquin and the Iroquois. There's the Siouan tribes that went into the east. We're going to talk about the origin today, and who's gonna let us know what's the story behind the Siouan tribes, who they really are. Because I know a lot of people, when they hear Siouan, they have a certain perspective and image of what a Siouan is supposed to look like, and so
Yeah.
they're not kind of like really, thinking of maybe even uh, the idea or the possibility that they actually might be Siouan too, in some way, in some of the lines, certain family lines that you got, especially if you go back to the Carolinas, Virginia, South Carolina. So it's that's just history and the genealogy. So there's a deeper story and an understanding. It's not just Blackfoot, it's not just Cherokee, it's not just five civilized tribes, it's not just Iroquois Confederacy. All right, so we're gonna kind of learn about that today a little bit. So I knew. So where you at? Where you from?
Oh yeah, me from Ohio, man. Just
Ohio.
yes,
Okay.
sir. The home of it all.
Yeah. So I met again a new in the back chats, and through him I met some good Catawba Saponi brothers like himself, the Wanagi, Opemiha, Kiowa, and we just kind of got along very good. A lot of the things that, folklore and mythology resemble a lot of the stuff I was learning here locally and stuff. So it's like, it's good to learn and see other perspectives and not just hear one-sided. So I wanted to actually, before we begin, show this kind of book right here. This is the Siouan Tribes of the East by James Mooney. All right, and he does a pretty good job. I mean, but he's very biased with the whole Cherokee thing, generalization. This was written in 1894, so by that time, a lot had changed. I just want to show something real quick. Let's see if we can get that out. Look at a map of Carolinas, tribal map. Oh. All right, if you just tuned in, we got special guest anew. It's Kurimeo Meditations. Welcome. All right. So you guys can see here, this is because they try to say, like, when they say Eastern Cherokee Band, it's really not that much Eastern, they were really more in Tennessee area, Appalachian Mountains area in the middle, kind of not towards the coast, not really. There was other tribes there anciently. So when we're talking about, when Europeans arrived, who was here in these areas, that's what we're going to try to cover today. What was there 1894 when Paul Mooney's writing his book, and later on, after everybody was misclassified and put and termed and tagged, under one umbrella, that's a little different. But you guys can see, with this map, you don't really, a lot of people ask me, look, what's a Catawba? I'm like, when I'm explaining who the Saponi of the Catawba are, when they have possible genealogy ties to that tribe, and they're like, what's a Catawba? What's a Saponi? So I thought, I think it's about time people should understand that there's other tribes, and what was really going on, and how, there was war, there was people, beefing anciently, before Europeans got here, tribal warfare, and that's okay. It's not about bringing that up today, and not to create any hostilities or any bad vibes. It's just history, and a lot of the Algonquin and Siouan tribes were enslaved by the five civilized tribes or became assimilated to them, and so they lost their kind of like heritage, and they were kind of tagged Cherokee and Blackfoot a lot of the times. So that's why there's a lot of people claiming the same thing, kind of, and when you realize, if you do the genealogy far enough, before 1830s, you might end up in these areas with certain family names and surnames that actually link to these kind of tribes, Algonquin or Siouan, especially in these areas of the Carolinas and Virginia. So hope you guys understand what I'm saying so far. All right, so this map, I don't know, Anu, if you can kind of emphasize, or am I making sense?
Yeah, see, this map right here talks about some of the people that were in Northern and South Carolina after their split. Prior to that, they were called the Carolina Indians. That's what they were known as before the split into South and North. If you look at the general areas, you have the Catawba and the Carolina Siouans. Then you go up into the Tulo area. That is, these all come from the Siouan linguistic system, not necessarily the Cherokee and the Creek, but the Catawba, the Tulo, the different areas that they had resided. Now, from their origination point, I'll get into that as soon as he wants me to, but I can start talking about the origin and where they generally come from.
Okay, well, let's leave that for a little bit. Let's say what was it, James Mooney? Yeah, James Mooney has to say a little bit. I'm just gonna read a little bit about that. All right, this is from 1894 again, so there is stuff missing from here. Just bear with me. All right.
Yeah, he was a little late to the draw. He came to the game a little late.
So he got this introduction to the Siouan Tribes of the East, the Southern Atlantic stock. All right, so he goes on to explain the Iroquois Nation, the Tuscarora, who they are, the Muskogee tribes, kind of like the general tribes, the Algonquin Iroquois tribes. All right, let me go. So then I'll put the mark. And then they talk about the Powhatans a little bit, the Iroquois stock. All right, the Nottoway, he's saying they are, Iroquoian. And right here he says, the name Nottoway, by which they were commonly known, signifies snakes or enemies, and was given by their neighbors, the Powhatan being one of the generic names used by the Algonquin tribes to denote any of a different stock. Manguac, the name by which they were known to the tribes on the south, is another generic term used by the Algonquin tribes to designate those of a Iroquois stock and signifies stealthy ones. In the north, it was commonly written Mingo or Mengwi. They called themselves Cheeto, Haka, a word of uncertain etymology. The fact that neither of these generic terms was ever applied to the Showanok is evidence that they belong to the common Algonquin stock adjoining the Nottoway. All right, so that's just here. Let me just get to the part where he's talking about the Siouans. Thought that was interesting, so you guys can understand who the Nottoway are too. That's okay. So right here, he's calling the Cherokee Iroquois tribe. It says the fourth Iroquois tribe was the powerful Cherokee nations. Now, that's actually part of it. It's not really Cherokee it's a lot more broad than that. It's not just Iroquois. What would you have to say about that, Anu? Could you call the Cherokee just Iroquois?
Yeah, not necessarily. Because at the time that James Mooney wrote the book, they had incorporated many tribes from the general area that they had taken over in certain areas of land. So individual groups had joined in with them, or individual groups were taken captive by them. So therefore, they maintained a powerhouse for the time being, especially in that general area.
All right, because I have heard that the Cherokee goes back to the Tusalagi, who are supposed to be a clan of the Iroquois who came down. Because you guys gotta understand, Iroquois are from Canada. So if it's true that the Cherokee are just Iroquois, then you're literally saying they came from Canada, so they're not originally from that area. Then you're admitting it, kind of. So it's actually more deeper than that. There is a lot more ancestry to the Cherokee, not just Iroquoian. Again, a lot of the East Coast tribes got labeled Cherokee. A lot of the runaway Sephardic Jews and Moors, indentured servants that were amalgamating and mixing with the Indians became Cherokee too. So we've gone over this stuff in my Black Dutch video, if you guys remember, my Sephardic Jewish videos and how they were, and then when you do your genealogy, you start seeing all this stuff. All right, so I just wanted to emphasize that because again, James Mooney is just going off some of his times, a lot of times just giving his opinion, what he believes, and a lot of people misconceive about, the Cherokee, because it's again a confederation. We'll talk about it more as we go. Now, it says the fourth occupying the North Carolina, Virginia, and the Blue Ridge. So that's like that little piece that we were showing earlier, right? Like towards Tennessee, more. It says the Coree on the coastlands south of the Neuse also may have been a tribe of the same stock. Now it says farther southward were the Catawba, who had their settlements about the river of the same name, just below the borderline between North Carolina and South Carolina, ranging upward to the hunting grounds of the Cherokee. They're inveterate enemies. All right, inveterate enemies. So is that true, Anu?
Yes, sir. That war had been going on as long as history precedes the Cherokee. They never got along.
So I don't think we've introduced. So what tribe do you represent, and what's like specifically like?
Yeah, see, I come from both sides. Do you mind if I get into the history?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, my mother's side is Saponi, my father's side is Catawba, coming down from the Harris line. Well, these two tribes actually integrated back in 1714 in Fort Christiana. So that was a big portion of why the Saponis and Catawbas started getting together and ultimately began to migrate with each other. My ancestry leads from my Saponi heritage. They left North Carolina and they came up into Ohio, dating back into 1752. And then my father's side, which is the heavier Catawba side, they came up and they didn't make it into Ohio until 1957 after leaving West Virginia. So the migratory patterns come from the same origin, but just different timelines. So, I hold both bloods, Saponi and Catawba, through the Scott line and through the Harris line.
Okay. All right. So, as James Mooney's saying here, they were inveterate enemies. All right. So, Anu can kind of testify to that. We'll talk about that more. And what does that really mean? Does it mean that they were like, that has to be something that, it's going to affect today or in present time, or if it means like that you have to be enemies? It's just, we're just talking about the history here. It says when first known, they were estimated at 1,500 fighting men. They're talking about the Catawba, right? Or at least 6,000 souls. But so rapid was their decline that in 1743, according to Adair, I remember James Adair, who wrote the book about the Indians being the lost tribes of Israel. Okay, that's his whole book is about. They were reduced to less than 400 warriors. So you see what happened to the Catawba people? And among these were included the broken remnants of more than 20 smaller tribes. So even in those 400 warriors, it wasn't just Catawba. So it was like a lot of the, probably the cousins of Siouan, people with similar linguistic stock that were just, kind of grouping up with the Catawba, I guess for protection and safety, So, and what was going on? You got to understand, they probably not won't say it here, but why was it, was it just the colonists? Was it just the colonists that, did this? And it was like, yes, part of it, a lot of it, but they also had help, again, they had enemies. So why wouldn't their enemies take advantage? If people come and trying to move their enemies, they're going to help them. Right. And if you're not part of a civilized tribe, then you're considered a savage tribe. You guys understand what I'm trying to say? And this is not about trying to make anybody feel bad or anything. It's just history. It's just we got to have every side of the story. So, okay, so 400 warriors left out of all, the fighting men they had. And again, this was remnants of more than 20 tribes, smaller tribes, which had taken refuge with their more powerful neighbors, but still retained their distinct dialects. Adair enumerates several of those incorporated tribes, but the mere fact of such an alliance proves nothing as to linguistic affinities. A few Catawba still remain on reservation in South Carolina, and recent investigation among them has proved conclusively that they are of Siouan stock, which is most definite. Closely related to them linguistically were the Wakun or Wakan, almost sound like Wakon, right? Occupying a small territory in the Fork of Neuse and Contentnia rivers, and adjoining the more numerous Tuscarora. Although one time a considerable tribe, they seem to have disappeared suddenly and completely soon after the Tuscarora War. So what do you think happened there? Your interpretation of this, and what do you think? Like, you talk about the Tuscarora, because we know they weren't always Iroquois.
No. Actually, some of them left and they joined the Iroquois nations, and others joined the Catawba. It was kind of a separation of powers. Certain people left and they migrated north, and ultimately some of them migrated south. The Catawba was known as a confederacy. It took in numerous amounts of smaller tribes, and they were warriors of their time. I mean, they were well advanced in warfare at their time also.
Okay. What was originally, what do you believe, or what does the history say about the Tuscarora? Who were they more related to?
Eastern Siouans.
Eastern Siouan.
Yeah.
All right. So when we go to that map, and that's what I'm saying, that's a deep one right there. If you guys understand, that's deep. People say I'm Tuscarora. They're thinking only Iroquois, and they're thinking.
Yeah, they actually didn't join the Six Nations until later, because originally it was the Five Nations. The Tuscarora were taken into the Six Nation. That was later. I'm gonna have to look up the exact. Actually, you could look it up, the exact date.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they didn't become the Six Nation until later on. The Five Nations had been withstanding prior to that. So, and being in the general area, of Eastern Siouan groups, you would kind of assume that the notoriety and who they generally were with were them.
Yeah, so in the 1700s, it's when they joined the Iroquois. So they said anciently, or they had gone south, but south from where? Because if they're Siouan, we're gonna see south from where. So we're gonna talk about Ohio today. What is the true origin of the Siouan people, of these Siouan tribes? We're gonna talk about that today. So that's kind of like a big one right there about the Tuscarora. So it's things that people don't really know. That might be actually Siouan tribe. So you gotta kind of break all your perceptions of what you think a Siouan is and all that. And who people are. There was we know that Tuscarora joined the Confederacy. We know that. That's historic. They weren't always there. All right. So, although at one time considered, okay, it says, if not absorbed by the Tuscarora, they were probably removed to the south and were incorporated with the Catawba. Turning now from the tribes whose affinities were thus well known, it will be found by referring to the map that we have still to account for a large central area in Virginia. This territory includes all west of a line drawn through Richmond and Fredericksburg, up to the Blue Ridge, or about one-half area of the state. In North Carolina, it includes the basins of the Roanoke, the Tar, the Cape Fear, the Yadkin, and the Upper Catawba rivers, comprising more than 2/3 of the area of that state. In South Carolina, it comprises nearly the whole central and eastern portion. In the 3 states, the territory in question comprised, all right, so that's the size. So who were the Indians of this central area? For a long time, the question was ignored by ethnologists. And to me, it's more than just ignored. You know, ethnologists don't just ignore things. If they ignore things, it's on purpose. Because why would they talk about a certain thing and leave out a big thing? These are a big part of history. You know, these tribes had a lot of influence here when it comes to, you know, Jamestown and the colonies and the first colonies, and who was really getting enslaved, you know. So yeah, was it just ignored, or was it just done on purpose? And it was implicitly assumed that they were like their neighbors, Iroquoian or Algonquin. Again, it was assumed. It was assumed in the north and Catawban in the south. It was never hinted that they might be anything different, and still less was it supposed that they would prove to be part of the great Siouan or Dakotan family, whose nearest known representatives were beyond the Mississippi or above the upper lakes, nearly 1,000 miles away. Yet the fact is now established that some at least of those tribes, and these the most important, were of that race of hunters, while the apparently older dialectic forms to be met with in the east, the identification of the Biloxi near Mobile as a part of the same stock. All right, so Biloxi Indians, Louisiana, they're Siouan. In case you guys don't know, they're not Muskogean, they're Siouan themselves, to the effect that they had come from the east. All now render it extremely probable that the original home of the Siouan race was not on the prairies of the west, but amidst the eastern foothills of the southern Alleghanies, or at least as far eastward as the upper Ohio region. All right, so again, James Mooney, he still don't know. He's 1894, he's still trying to figure it out. The Siouan tribes came out of Ohio. It has something to do with the ancient Ohio people. We're going to talk about that today. All right. Some years ago, the author's investigations led him to suspect that such might yet prove to be the case. And in a paper on the Indian tribes of the District of Columbia, read before the Anthropology Society of Washington, 1899, Mooney, he expressed this opinion. All right, so he goes into it. And he goes into why he thinks they were actually from the east, not originating from, you know, the plains. All right. So I just want to kind of read this so you guys can understand that there is tribes there. Also show this website. Hold on. This is the Access Genealogy, and they have a great. Oh, shit. Where is it? So we got the Siouan tribes of the east. All right, and they're quoting Mooney here a little bit, but here's some of the names. So it goes into all these Southern Atlantic stocks, the Pascagoula, the Gula, Pascagoula, Guale, Gula. All right, so I'm trying to tell you, they're signing deep here with the Siouan tribes, guys. Moktobe, Shosetta, the Manahawk, the Monacan. That's where the Huguenots landed. They took over the whole Monacan town. If you guys watch my South Carolina Huguenot video, you see what happened to the Monacan when the Huguenots arrived. And who are the Huguenots? I don't have to repeat. You guys know already, right? The Mahawk, the Nuntanuk, the Mohitan, the Mayponski or Maypuski, the Saponi and Tutelo Indians, the Okanishi, the Sarah, all right? The Sarah and their allies. I got a future video on the Sarah. Shout out to Adanu, Unu. My fault, brother. Gentle Bull. All right, we got some deep research there going on in that area with the Sarah and their folklore and their legends, and something to do with a mountain there that looks like a tree trunk, something to do with Noah and a flood. All right, the Sarah Indians, the Kiyawi, the Ino, the Chokori, or Chokori, the Chokori, not Cherokee, Chokori, and Ashushir, the Wokan, the Sisi Paha, Cape Fear, and Warren Nunhak Indians, the Catawba, the Waxhaw, the Sugary, the Pidi, Wakama, the Winya, the Hooks and Backhooks, the Siwi, Santi, Watery, Kongari. You know, if I'm saying it wrong, correct me, Anu. All right.
No, you're doing good.
right, so now I don't know about all this. You know, the Southern Carolina tribe, Cherokee. That's not Kuza. No, that's not Siouan, right?
Nah, those are just other tribes that were in
Okay.
Carolina around the general area. The top
Okay.
tier is just the Siouan tribes.
So I don't know if we named all of them, but that was a lot of tribes that a lot of people never even heard of.
No, there's actually many more. There's many more. It's just the fact that they were deemed or considered extinct over a point in time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell us, all right. So let's tell us what's the history, like the ancient history of the Siouan. If you want to add in the mythology and folklore, go ahead. And if you want to go deep, go as deep as you want. Where's it
Okay.
coming from? How did they get to the East Coast? And what's the relation to the ones they call in Mongol in the plains? All that.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, there was an archaeological dig called the Indian Knoll Dig. The Indian Knoll Dig was done, and the excavation point was right at the lines of Ohio and Kentucky. This dated back that right around 5000 BC was kind of the origins, but yet there were the highest points when it was the most populated was between 3000 and 2000 BC. So you can kind of imagine that these people were here with a high population, doing many different things, because you have the shell mounds, which prove that they were getting shells from parts of South America brought up. Then also you were getting right there between 3000 and 2000 BC. So people didn't start really dividing off until about 2000 BC. The land was plentiful. Many people don't generally tend to migrate unless you have a general population or population explosion. Now, the old story states that individuals followed because you have certain tribes that were migratory and you have certain tribes that actually were just, they stayed in one place, and you had your nomadic tribes. Many tribes followed the food sources. So some of them would go out west and they would follow the buffalo, which if you look, there are two different types of buffalo. Buffalo, sorry. There are two different types. You got the plains and you got the woodland. So if you look at the areas, they just traveled with whatever type that they had, which was their main food source. Many of them started to flood out to the west, which is the ones that some people quote unquote call Mongols, but many of them began to flow into the East Coast right around 2000, 1500, and continued to migrate there because it was, at the time, it may have been charted territory, but of course you had expansion. They expanded down there, and that's where we get to know a lot of the tribes on the eastern seaboard, from the Carolinas, Virginia, into North Carolina, West Virginia, which prior to being considered West Virginia was Virginia, and then also you had them being up into Ohio. So some of them stayed, many of them migrated, but eventually later on, many of them just came back home. You can also look into the earthworks. Now, we do have earthworks up here. We have the mounds, many different mounds. We have the 7 caves. I mean, a lot of the stuff that shows it, the serpent mounds. The serpent mounds is a belief. It's believed that in the serpent mounds, that is an area that where the Siouan, or what people call the snake people, originated from. And if you look at it, it literally looks like a sperm and an egg. So they were talking about the creation point of life was here.
I'm gonna show them. Hold on, serpent.
Yeah, from the aerial view.
Yeah. All right. So here's the drawing. We gotta look at the. There we go. All right. So if you actually pay attention to where the serpent mound is, the mound, the so-called mound, is in this is the shape of the mound. Okay, that's the shape of the mound, and you can see it coming from its, and then it goes up, and that's the egg or the seed, right? That's what I'm seeing. I don't know,
Yeah.
That's literally what I'm seeing, and you won't really notice that from, you look at it, but that's literally what, you guys understand what we're talking about? Let me get a one. Can I get a one? Don't give me a one. So yeah, like the Ohio, the whole wheel culture, the Adena culture. What you got? How about the Adena culture?
Yeah, from here in Ohio, just in general, there are many cultures that started from here and kind of spread out. The cultures were different time frames and different time periods. So when you look at what was going on at that current in that current area and geographic location, that's when you start to figure out who these people were, who they populated, the mounds, the pyramids, the many different things that you see all over Ohio, Kentucky, like I said, into Virginia. But from the digs that they had found is the vast majority, even as far as dog burials, which proved that at point in time between 5000 and 2000 BC, they were burying dogs with them as family pets. So they hadn't seen that generally around the world. These people were burying dogs with them at the foot. So it was kind of one of the things, domesticated dogs had been around for, between 5 to 2000 BC, and it had been shown in over 21 different, I believe it's 21 different burials. So these things were pets. They weren't just wild animals. These people had actually, sat down, tamed, loved them, and took them in as part of the family. So,
well, it's interesting you bring that up because that actually, when I was doing my research with the Xolotl dog, right, the real Anubis in Mexico, same thing in Mexican culture. They were burying their dogs to protect them in the underworld as their best friends, keep them safe, everything, even protect their graves, things like that. It was very symbolic. It was their pet. They would, if they passed away, they would go with them, to the afterlife. So this is not an Egyptian thing, is my point. We know that Xolotl, the real Anubis, is here. And before the Mexica or the people in Mexico were doing it, they were doing it. There's just proof of it, is what the news is saying, in Ohio, all the way, in BC times. We're talking about 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. This is proven. So this is before Mexico. Now, there is a legend of the Mexica and the Mayas. They all kind of talk about, their origin story. And this is something we're going to get into. I'm going to get into in the future videos about Ohio, why it's called the start of it all. If you guys understand, that's Ohio's model, right? The start of it all. And they tell you these things for a reason. These things mean something. It's not just all coming out of Mexico and all that. And remember, where was the oldest land? You guys saw my oldest land video, oldest water, oldest fossil. That was coming out of Canada, the Laurentian Mountains. So it makes sense that, because that's very close from here. Quebec ain't too far from here, So, Ohio, people settling down, and that whole serpent thing, what we were talking about earlier, it kind of makes sense to me. When we're talking about also the Nile, the source of the Nile and all, the Mississippi, which is the Nile. To me, it's already a fact. That's why I call it the Nile, which means Great River. That's why I said it, Great River. Mississippi is Great River. All right, Great River. And so, like, you see how it, is mounds from the start of, all the way from Ohio, even Wisconsin, the Great Lakes, all the way down to the Mississippi, Louisiana, all that. That's ancient Tamari right there. And when we're talking about in bondage, right? When you're talking about you're in Egypt in bondage and people fleeing or that's not in like just biblical. We know that many tribes had to flee and move and migrate. It's not just a biblical thing. So we're not just talking about a biblical thing here. And when we're talking about the origin story of the Mexica, it's not in the Bible, it's in their codices and stuff. And they write that they were led by their priest king, Meshi, Meshitling, Moshe, and he would deliver them to their promise. And they were coming from the seven caves or from the north, Astalan. And there's only one place I found seven caves. When I'm talking about the Mayas, say they originated from the seven caves. I found the seven caves in Ohio. There's actually a park called Seven Caves, which is private now. It used to be public in the 70s, and it's they don't let people in now. That's literally the Seven Caves it's called. So Ohio plays a big role here when we're talking about the origin of not just Americans or civilization or anything like that, but the whole world. Because when we're talking about the true old world, we're talking about here, they're dating. We got to trust their carbon datings and all that. And so we also got to go with what we know, what we read and what we can see, right? What we can feel. And, it all kind of makes sense. So this is why I wanted Anu to come on and explain this, because a lot of people leave this kind of out, even though a lot of people are trying to talk about it. Anu was kind of like the first, talking about Ohio. Nobody really was before. and you know, he was teaching me a lot about Ohio, and I've been wanting to get into it. And again, there's people that write. I have anthropological books that write about the Aztec and Mexica, literally coming from Ohio. That's what their opinion is based on what they find in their research and archaeological, because they're finding. I mean, when you go into the Ohio Hopewell culture and Adena and all this stuff, I'm gonna show some of the statues. I mean, you guys saw the statues um, in the cover, right? That's from the Adena. You know, you can compare this to many Maya and Central American effigy statues too, and pipes and all that. You can find toucan birds in the Ohio mounds, you know, pipes, you know, and you know that's because of the trade and how vast, you know, actually the families extended. It's not just, you know, people migrate and stuff, and they have children and they migrate and they have kingdoms, and there's a similar linguistic stock. That's what we're learning earlier, right? Like the Siouan people spreading all over, the Muskogee people spreading, you know, the Algonquin people spreading, and you can trace who they are based on their language. Not always, because a lot of
Mhm.
people learn new languages, so it's not always an indication, right? Because you guys speak English doesn't mean we're all from England, so, or that we come from that area of the world, you know. So just take that in mind. But it does show a little bit of where they might be coming from, who they originate from. And when you look at all these tribes from the East Coast that you never heard of, and when I'm doing the videos, all these tribes are being labeled free people of color. They're being sold as Negroes. If you guys saw the video yesterday, if you didn't, it was, you know, we showed a lot of cases, freedom suits, American Indians being sold illegally as Negroes. One of them was Rachel versus Bud. I knew that's one of your ancestors. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, actually, the Butts versus Rachel case was a very historic case. That was my third great aunt. When we were doing my genealogy, ran into her a while ago. So that's why the case was, you know, it was pretty important overall. And it showed that individuals can be taken from one place. Like, for instance, when he did the video, it showed that she was taken, her mother was taken from Virginia, Papoose. She was taken from Virginia, taken to Jamaica, birthed children in Jamaica, and then her children were brought here as slaves, where they had to go through and get their freedom. But attaining their freedom, I was going to say Rachel was pretty old when she attained the freedom of her and her brothers, and she only won, I think it was $5.01 at the time, in her freedom, the freedom of her and her siblings.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, that's what I'm saying. So she was, so what, she was Saponi, right? Saponi? Or what was
Yes.
she? So see,
Yeah.
they didn't mention that in any of the articles. They probably didn't even know. You know, they might just label her eventually as a Cherokee or something, you know. They just know she left from that area, and she came back as a Negro, as a slave, a Negro slave from Jamaica, right? And then
Yeah.
she had to, you know, fight for her freedom in court, and she's a so-called slave, right? So how do slaves go to court? You know, how can a slave sue their master if all they showed us was Kunta Kinte getting whipped, and all this like bad stuff happening, impossible stuff, that when you try to imagine slaves going to court, and like we read yesterday, there were states that if you can prove you were free, they would allow you to, go to court. But how do you even have the time to do that, or even build a case, go to court and say, hey, can I go? Who's giving you permission to do all that? So you guys got to understand, it's deeper than what we've learned and all that. Now, to
Yeah. Not only that, you got to remember they had to. A lot of them had to learn how to read, write, and actually express litigation. You know, they had to have enough intelligence to sit there and talk. Express their case to the judge. So
yeah,
that's a real big point too. They had to know some forms of law, or at least the Indian laws at the time for slavery. So they
that's,
there,
that's a
there was
good.
a level of intelligence, high level of intelligence there.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. So obviously a lot of them could read and write too, probably, that, they're saying they couldn't. I've seen a lot that they can. A lot of them, it's not that they couldn't read or write, they just spoke a different language. They were their main language was in English or whatever. But so that was a good example of and eventually, they're being called Africans in history. And do you have any African ancestry, like that you know of?
No, the only ancestor that even remotely was said to be one was Benjamin Banneker. Remember we traced him back, but then they don't have any story of him coming from Africa at all.
So yeah, I
So,
remember that. Yeah, we were actually working on news genealogy. He was letting me see his tree, and yeah, we got to Benjamin Banneker, supposedly one of his ancestors on one of his lines, and
mhm.
you know, they're trying to say his dad or somebody's an African or he's an African or whatever, and there's no proof of that. You'll find that in genealogy, people manually putting in that stuff. You know, unknown African dad or unknown slave from Africa. You got to dodge the hijack big time with that stuff. Sometimes you'll find pictures and camera wasn't even invented. So you guys got to really pay attention to this stuff, man. So you're like, well, that's not my ancestor. That's a white man, or that's not, you know, or you find a drawing, it's a drawing. It doesn't mean nothing. It's a drawing. So things to look into. I knew, it's not something he's just saying I don't have African because he literally knows because, like I learned how to do genealogy because of I knew actually he'll tell you himself, but he was doing helping with the enrollment in the Catawba Nation, I believe. He'll explain it. How long were you doing that?
I was at it for about 15 years. Studied genealogy, learned tribal migration patterns, families, where they come from, where they went to, different areas, names that they took, such as Carmel Community, Ginger Skin. So you begin to learn basically through sitting down and understanding these families, occasionally surnames, who they migrated with, different times, years that these people were in specific areas and specific places, the migratory patterns. You kind of learn who they mixed and intermingled with, and then also you learn a lot about where they originally come from, because some of these families have very, very rich core names. Also marrying, intermingling with people who are Irish, Scottish, people who are English, and being able to trace some of those names, made it a little bit easier. But yeah, I was doing genealogy for about 15 years. So prior to
Okay.
that, I was helping with genealogy for 15 years, but prior to that, I've been doing it for about 20, 22 years.
Okay. That's cool. So yeah, like just for practice alone, because I only have like 2 or 3 years, two the most, I think actually, and it's a learning process. I do got to say that I can't picture people doing genealogy with a false history mentality. Like not knowing a true history, a true of who the people are, not just white and black or Africans and white Europeans or slave masters and African slaves, because you're guessing and you're doing false history. It's not correct. So be careful who you're having to do your genealogy. A lot of people are biased. They're the genealogists, but they're being biased. They have their preconceived ideas of who people are supposed to be. So that's what they're looking for. A lot of people trying to make you slaves. A lot of people trying to make you Africans. Some people, and I'm gonna be honest, and a lot of people, and I get this a lot when I do genealogy. Some people just want to be Indian, and that's okay. That's fine. But you have many lines. You have many lines. You have a very deep history, and you never know with the how deep the ancestry is, and the European part, the Black European part, who they are, who they might be, who they descend from eventually. Do they end up coming back to America? Is there a connection to the ancient Eastern tribes, or even Central America, the Maya, South American tribes, quite possibly. What I'm trying to say is, you don't just have one grandma, you have many, many, every generation doubles on each line, on every person. On every person you have as an ancestor, it doubles. You get a new surname every time. There's a new
Mhm.
surname every time. Okay, so I wanted to talk about some of the things like that, misconceptions. Maybe we can talk about. Um, when it comes to surnames, that's one of them. A lot of people ask me, so what surnames are? A lot of people think they're receiving their surnames from a slave master, or they got because they were an Indian and it got put onto them only. You know, even though there is cases like that, that's not just the whole truth. What would you have to say about that? And like, what do you think?
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Due to the fact that even if you look back historically from certain areas, a lot of tribes didn't have last names. They would be their last name would be their tribal name. So you would be such and such of this tribe or such and such of this tribe, either your tribe or your clan. So when we look for markers as far as a lot of these last names, you're generally going to run into a lot of last names that are English, Irish, Scottish, of European heritage. you're going to run into that just due to marrying and intermingling. So you will find historical records back in the 1700s when they talk about indigenous people where their name was just Bird, Bird of the such and such clan, or this of the such and such clan. So therefore, there were many different categories of people who didn't have a last name. And when they became, of course, when they married in, when they got into marriage, or when they became, when they started linking up with these families, they started to take on their last names because it was a way to be identified, one, and it was also a way for it to inhabit these areas. So, yeah, you hit the nail on the head there.
Okay. There is some that you know of, based on doing genealogy and everything, some examples of some surnames that might have been uh indigenous. Do you have like some examples?
Yeah, you got the Harris was a very, very famous name as far as when it comes to Catawba history. Then when you deal with the Saponi, you're going to run into a lot of Scots. It's just something that was there. The Locklears, that's another family name that you can trace back. It just depends on the general area, time, and date. That would probably be the most important thing when doing genealogy because of the migration patterns and looking at these names. So you will find Johnsons, you will find Washingtons, you will find different names that match these people. But occasionally when you go back, me and Kurimeo have been on genealogy before, where you'll find a person who the tribal surname, you look at the surname and believe it's tribal, and you'll jump right over to England, or right over to Ireland, right over to Scotland. But then you'll find a dead end when the people originally came over here, married and intermingled with indigenous people, and that surname was taken by them. So, you're going to catch that a lot.
Yeah, yeah. So, now when we talk about like why why did you have beef with the Cherokee? Like what's the story behind that, and what's your take on it?
Yeah, well, it's just been pretty long and drawn out, due to the fact that the wars were going on between the different factions. So you had them trying to move into the Carolinas and take over the hills of the Carolinas. This was, if you look at the maps change based off of geographic location and time. So let me sit up for this one because this one kind of gets into it. So based off geographic location and time, you could start to see the maps change from the 1600s all the way into the 1800s, and they started to migrate out of eastern Tennessee into the western parts of the Carolinas. What had happened as they began to mix and intermingle with, of course, one group had taken on, people sided with people. We'll just put that. Different groups sided with their enemy. So therefore, if you look at who, some people were British allies, some people were English allies, some people were French or Spanish allies. So therefore, by possessing weaponry and joining these groups, they were able to push their way into different areas. Now, I'm not going to say all tribes, sat there and aligned with them, but the vast majority of them did because it was a way of life. Therefore, in order to get weaponry, the different things that they needed, gunpowder, et cetera, as war began to advance and understanding that the European was bringing over weaponry that was kind of hard to deal with, the indigenous people of this land had to learn how to match it. So therefore, if one tribe got guns, well, how do you fight guns? You have to, fortunately, get other, have a means to get guns. So being able to side with certain groups and certain tribes, it kind of helped out. But you can look up historically who these tribes sided with because it's common knowledge, to be honest with you. And those tribes mixed, intermingled, and also married. But, as far as the beef goes, the beef was just everlasting. That's something that never necessarily stopped. And eventually, I wish I had the maps, but you could see where they just started pushing and pushing further into the Carolinas, and they took over the area, which, was land that wasn't theirs.
Yeah, so
they took it by conquest.
Like when you actually look at most maps, the old ones, even on this one that's just modern, you see this whole area says Catawba. Obviously, it's not just Catawba. A lot of the Siouan tribes there and some of the other Algonquin tribes nearby. But in general, that was mainly Siouan in that area. And that's the truth. And people don't really know that. Like people are talking about Cherokees, Choctaw, and other stuff, and Muskogean tribes, and not really, not till after. And again, remember, you guys got to know Cherokee, Blackfoot, that's a lot of time became a generalized term. explain to them how, I mean, we've noticed, I did a video, right? The Chowan video I did, the Chowan people, and they had to by force claim Cherokee. They're telling us their story. This is nothing I'm making up. This is something that's written down historically. In the Dosro, they had to claim Cherokee, and they were Chowan people. Those are Algonquin speaking people. So this is what I'm saying. Now, why a lot of people Cherokee anew? Based on what we're saying, like, why was that like used in general?
Yeah, it was a generalization because to use the word Cherokee was synonymous with using the word Indian. When they began to move into different areas, the Cherokee name in itself was just, like Kurimeo said, it was synonymous with the term Indian, and also it was the easiest way to be classified without being classified as an Indian. I mean, classified as an enemy. So say, for instance, you're moving into a different location where you have people who are Catawban, or you have people who are Eastern Siouan, who are currently the enemy of the Cherokee. Once you're outnumbered, there are certain things you have to say in order to make sure that you're not A, removed, or B, exterminated. It was also found that when you look around, there are many people who knew their indigenous history from the Carolinas and Ohio. They applied for the Cherokee Nation because the Cherokee became, like he stated, a misnomer for just for the term Indian. So you'll see a lot of people who said that, or they'll say, I have Cherokee ancestry, I have Blackfoot ancestry, but their families come from areas that didn't hold either of those two people. So,
one tribe one of the tribes is Saponi, right? That's Tutelo, right?
Correct.
What does that mean in Tutelo?
Yeah, because you got the Sapon. It's basically where everything meets. It's where the waters meet. That's why they were looked at. They were the water protectors. So, you mind if I get into the dialects real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. When you look into the Siouan dialects, there were many different dialects. You had Lakota, Dakota, Nakota, Hidashta. Then you had Tutelo. You had Biloxi. You had Ofogula. And these dialects spread all down the East Coast, all the way down into Mississippi. So these are all Siouan families who spoke a dialect that I'm not going to say that they can completely understand each other word for word, but there was a general dialect that could be spoken between these people. And eventually, through time, it separated to the point where, of course, they can no longer understand. But they're all the same general family. So those people that you see, you can look them up: Lakota, Nakota, Dakota, Hidashta, Tutelo, and different linguistic systems. You'll find them floating all around, and you would have never known they were Siouan because of the general location. Even if you look at ancient maps of Georgia, you'll see there was Catawba sitting right smack dab in the middle of Atlanta. So,
okay. And
very widespread.
So Saponi, I heard something about it being black.
Yeah, the word Sapo. Sapo means black. If you look in the Lakota language, the word Sapo means black. So when you look at that, and just in general, you got Sapo and then Ni, so which translates over to Blackfoot. Now, not to be confused with, there are Algonquin Blackfeet, so don't think I'm actually discrediting them at all. But I'm just saying the term Blackfoot was not specifically used for one group that was the Algonquins. We had us, which it translated over in Lakota to Blackfoot.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna here give my opinion and theorize here, but I bet a lot of the people who claim Blackfoot in the Southeast don't really understand the origin of where or what that means, like, or who they might be. What is a Blackfoot in the Southeast? Because see, Blackfoot, like you're saying, Algonquin, Blackfeet are from Alberta, Canada in general. Doesn't mean those are Mongols either. If you guys go to my Instagram, I have a lot of Blackfoot and Blackfeet. Very dark complexion, so-called Negro, like very dark, like, very dark. Now, they would be classified as Negroes today. There's no African American, whatever you think of them. One of them was the samurai guy, not the samurai, but he was actually one of the first Mounties, Winnipeg Jack. You guys can Google Winnipeg Jack. You'll see what I'm talking about. All right, Blackfoot, Blackfeet. You guys know what I'm talking about, man. So, yeah, so that whole mentality of, thinking that anybody west of the Mississippi is a Mongol. What do you think about that?
Nah, to be honest, I refuse to believe that. I really can't, because of tribal relocation and the Indian Removal Act. Starting from of course it was in 1830, but a lot of people don't know Indian Removal Act was even happening up in Ohio in 1813. So there was relocation from people all over the East Coast and being moved west. Many people migrated out of their lands in order to keep their tribal beliefs and their tribal belief systems, and being able to go to a place that they would assume was free. Went out to Indian country. So therefore, I can't really say that. The plains is a geographic location. The word plains strictly just means hills. That's it. So if you look at the plains and you look at the woodlands, is just all it is just a landscape. That's it.
Yeah. Hey, much love, Kane. Anyways, so this is actually a good colorized picture of Winnipeg Jack. I have my own too, but this is a good example of what I was saying. All right, they're comparing it with her, right? And phenotype and everything, complexion. So like, it'd be wrong to call this guy a Mongol. Like, you guys, you gotta break out of that whole prejudice kind of mentality of judging people by physical traits. America's a true old world. We had every phenotype here. We had every type of hair. All the shades of copper. That's why I call it copper colored tribes of America. Copper comes in dark shades. Yes. It also comes in light shades, copper. That's why they use that word, copper colored tribes. All right, so you guys know what I'm talking about. If you see somebody that's light skinned as well, doesn't mean that they have white in them always. Whatever you think of white is. Talk about the Caramel Indians.
Yeah, you had different communities that were based off complexion. So when you look at it, and this is pre-European descent, you had people who would come over, and you had different communities called the Caramel community, which of course was, a direct correlation between the color of the people. Then you can even look, some people call them the Genghis skins, but they were the ginger skins or ginger skins. So, there's a couple different stories about how that goes. But ultimately, if you look at the areas, those that had many trees, just basic geographic location, it would only make sense, this being the old world, that there were many different people of many different complexions all the way out through here. Mm-hmm. Depending on sun exposure, trees, different things like that, people who were in the shade, people change over time.
Well, you just brought up something very interesting and logical, right? Because people try to go off climate, to determine where people are supposed to come from, right? So now you said something about eastern woodlands and shade and trees and all that. I know that the plains has no shade. So in my mind, logically, I'm saying, okay, well, these people might end up being more swarthier, or might get more sun than people in the woodlands.
Yeah, if you think about it, just
that's all it depends. Not all the woodlands, but yeah, there was a lot of woods. Like they told us, like you said earlier in our genealogy session, that we can confirm this. Different sources. We got Spanish sources saying a squirrel can travel from Canada all the way down to Mexico without touching the ground. So like, I just want to give an example. We're looking at the beautiful princes right here. I think I've had the third one to going in my video, in one of my videos, talking about her Shinnecock tribe. But their complexion, they would be considered lighter than, they might be called mulatto. That doesn't mean they have white in them. It's what we're trying to point out always. And that's what I'm just want to people understand, So, and so what do you
it depends on what direction you want to go, because even looking at it from that standpoint, like you said, there were people, the woodlands, the people were constantly in shade, and then the people who were sitting out on the plains, they were constantly getting beat on by sun. And then whether they were migratory or what, that would generally kind of, put into consideration the amount of sun they got. Think about it. You're just sitting in the woodlands all day, chilling in the shade.
Yeah.
Your complexion's going to change from those who have constant sun exposure.
Yeah. And I see a lot of the eastern woodland people, like, some of the elders and stuff, and, they have this tone and it's not always just because they're like mixed um with white. Just like if you see a dark skin or so-called black, what you consider a black Indian, what most white people would consider a black Indian, doesn't mean they're African or mixed with any more or anything like that. There was people with that complexion here too, that tone. Again, copper colored tribes is very broad. If you guys go look at the shades of copper, go look at the different pennies they've had throughout the year, many shades, not just dark either. You know, it's many shades. Copper comes in many shades. Talking about copper, they found, let's see, talking about Ohio.
Mind if I bait, man?
Yeah, go ahead. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of like talk about that because I think we're at the point we got to stop killing, like to kill the prejudice, like, and it's not just because I'm light skinned and because of me. This ain't just about me, because a lot of people think I'm just trying to make myself be part of them, not knowing that I got my genealogy done and I know who I am, And a lot of people say, well, why don't you just talk about your people over there in Mexico? I'm not even Mexican. Or whatever they think they are, I am, and so not knowing that they might actually come out of Mexico, especially if you're Muskogean. That language, a lot of it goes back to the Mexico, the Timucua from South America. A lot of this goes back. So it's not about boundaries. It's not about hating on a specific landmass and hating all the people in that landmass and classifying them under one tag like Mexican. Like people ask me, did the Mexican Indians mix with the Black Indians? And I just, honestly, I don't really want to answer that because, watch my videos, they're asking me in the comments. And so you're just, what's a Mexican Indian to you? Because I can show you. I can show you some Mexican Indians. I can show you Mexican Indians that look what white people will call West African. So what is a Mexican Indian to you? And I can vice versa. And so what's a Black Indian? You're using crayon colors still. So to all those people that are new to the channel and everything, just recommend to take the time to really study the videos, the information. You have to go into it. You got to empty your cup. We carry all a bias and a cultural background, and it's okay. That's how we got to where we're at. But the learning doesn't stop. The learning keeps going. I actually wanted to do this video, like I said earlier. Actually, I've been asking him and Kiowa and everybody to get on for the longest time. But I just, there's always a time for everything. There's always a time for everything. There's a lot of understanding that needs to be done, a lot of studying, a lot of acceptance that needs to be done before certain information can be taken historically, not personally. And I hope you guys understand and hear or understand what I'm saying. I don't mean to go into my little speech here, but I mean, we're at the point where we know so much. We can't be stuck on certain things. We got to keep learning. Like, me personally, 5 years ago, I never thought I would learn all the stuff I've learned in the last 5 years. We found out, hey man, there was Black Indians here, so-called Black, right? And that was a whole new game, and that just made us rethink of everything. That changed everything. So the thing is, the learning didn't stop. It kept going, and we're finding out how deep the rabbit hole it really is, So I want you guys to, keep digging, man. Understand, you got to kill the prejudice. You got to hold the people accountable, people and, stop doing that. How do you know that? Show me their genealogy. Wow, those are our people too. Or show me your genealogy, how you know you're 100%, A lot of people feel like they're 100%. A lot of people get mad at not just that that I'm saying other people might be your people too, but that there was Black Europeans. A lot of people take that very personal, very personal. I knew in your case, you were one of the first people that told me you had Irish in you, with no shame.
Very proud of it.
Tell me about the relationship between your people, the indigenous part, and who were they mixing with, and what's the story with the Europeans that were coming in?
Oh yeah, you had some of the Irish that came in because I have descendants who are from the McClure family. I have descendants who are from the O'Hare family. When they were coming in and mixing with indigenous people in the Carolinas, because that's where they were landing, Carolinas and Virginia. So, I'm very proud of every part of my heritage. You know, I've never had any issues with it. My great grandmother's last name is Folklore. You know, it's just a heavy Irish name. I've never denied it, never set it to the side, never said I wasn't part of it. It's just, you know, you have a general love for your culture. And when you have a general love for the culture and understanding every part of your culture, it makes you a whole, in my personal opinion. So being able to sit down and, you know, be proud of who you are, proud of where you come from, just because you don't agree with where one ancestor comes from doesn't mean it's not part of you. You know, it is what it is. A lot of the Catawbans and the Saponis, they did have Irish counterparts. That was just part of it. To say that people didn't mix and intermingle, yeah, it wouldn't have made sense. It's just nonsensical.
Right. Yeah. So again, you know, this is stuff. It's an uncomfortable, like, conversation for some. But you know, we get trolls. We get nice try, Jag. Nice try, man. That's low, man. Jag. Like, I know who you are, man. Anyways, yeah. So like he's saying I'm not a native, I'm Spanish. That's what I'm saying. So, you know, you got people that are around you that do the same thing, man, and you just, you know, we just stay quiet because, you know, we don't want to look like the one defending the Mongol, right? And I'm being real with you guys. Because a lot of people say they got love and they love this for, thanks for teaching us about, you know, like separating me from what I'm teaching. Like, it's not also part of my history, you know. My genealogy's, you know, I got a lot of it done. Of course, I got a lot of dead ends. You know, the farthest back I was able to go in certain lines, you know, I see the Sephardic, Moorish, Sephardic Jews, Moors, you know. I got the story and everything of them, how they're being persecuted, going to Costa Rica from the Madeiras Islands, the Azores, Canaries, and coming and mixing with the princesses and the indigenous people of Costa Rica. That's in my genealogy, man. So how are you gonna judge me? You know, how without you even showing your genealogy or even probably done your genealogy, because you're just based on everything on a physical look, you know. So, you know, people have their biases and prejudices, and as long as nobody like that, you know, when you know this person, it doesn't affect you personally, you know, you just let it slide, like, you know, he's talking about me, you know. But you never know, it might be, you know, I might be more your people. I'm just being real with you because based on the genealogy that I've been helping a lot of people with, I see a lot of similarities with my genealogy and a lot of the history and the stories of who the people are. And we're talking about colonial times. You know, it's almost like the same story. And then I run into genealogy. I'll be real, and the people who I've done the genealogy for know who I'm talking about because they saw it and they're accepting it. They come to an understanding that certain lines are straight European, black Europeans, Huguenot, Sephardic Jews, you know, Acadians. You know, I'm just giving examples here. You know, Quakers, Black Protestants, Black Irish, Black Scots, and they're okay with it. And they're learning a very deep history with that. They're learning, okay, so who are the Highlanders? Who are these Picts? Who are the ancient Picts of Ireland? Who are these people? You know, who are the Basque? Why does the Basque have a similar language to the Algonquin? That's even called the Pidgin, the Algonquin Basque Pidgin. There's a connection here, you know. But it's all future videos. But that's just something for you to think about. And again, I wanted Anu to come here to you know, talk about, you know, the side that we never hear. Again, what do you think? Why were they called civilized tribes? Why do we only know about the Iroquois Confederation or the, you know, the 5 civilized tribes?
Well, because generally those were the ones that were spoke of. There was a reason they were considered civilized, you know, here nor there, but they were the ones that were generally spoke of. They were the ones who took over many locations. So once again, you get into that ride with us or collide with us mentality, where you have individuals who took over locations and just out of sheer fear, out of saying something and being an enemy or being relocated, being separated from your family, you just stated you were A, B, C, D, or E. So it just became. Also, when they were enacted, a lot of the civilized tribes were given land out in these areas. You know, they were given land, so the population increased, and of course, you know, them being civilized and not savage, they were promoted.
Yeah. And so that's what I'm saying. So in whose eyes were they civilized? You know, according to who and why? So you guys gotta ask those questions, and then things people don't ask, they just accept. I'm part of the five civilized tribes, okay, but there's you might be something else too. You might be something else too. Is that just off of
Yeah.
one line you're going off, or So that's why we're saying, try to like know, even if you didn't grow up with the person or your family member that it's still your blood. If you know the info, do it. Try it out, see what you find. It doesn't has it's not really personal. It's not, it's just for your future, for your seeds if you have any, so they can know who they are. It helps out a lot of people that may not know certain information that you have about that family. You might help out thousands of people. You never know. I do it all the time. We build a tree, and I know when I'm building a tree for the first time that these families have never built a tree, because you get really little hints. There's no pictures. There's like nothing, and they don't know anything. So it's very, and then you got genealogies where it just hints right away for 4 or 5 hours straight, and it doesn't end. You can go 10, 12 hours straight and just get a bunch of hints. And so these people know who they are. They had the history written down. The records are there. You see the gameplay when you're looking at the census records. You guys are getting really good at reading this stuff, and I've seen watching all the channels and all the people teaching genealogy. So people are becoming very hip to what to look out for and everything, and the miss spellings and variations in names and things like that, and understanding how to match people and all that. You got to be very careful. A lot of the time there is gatekeepers in these websites that are just trying to make you into things. um so based on what they believe, not any record. So a lot of people add manual things, like, I mean, they manually put in words like African or something in the name. That doesn't mean the person's African. That's just the person saying that because she knows the person is of dark complexion, you know. So a lot of the times it's a white person, usually so-called white, that does this just to point out their so-called black ancestor. So they put colored, or a free person of color, mulatto, or they put something next to the name to describe them. So that's how you see these things. But I started babbling a little bit. Shout out to War Chief Red Line, came in. Peace, brother. He also another brother I learned from. Gonna have him on hopefully one day to tell his people's story, which is deep, just like the news, man. And when you actually know the deepness, and just open up to everything, you start finding out so much history about your family and who your people were really, where they were coming from, originating. It's really about knowing thyself truly. It's not just biased saying I just want to be this and I just want to be that and that's all I am. That's not reality. That's not reality. People probably people out there think that I'm only Indian. I don't have no black European, or they talk about others like, oh, those are the black Europeans. Oh, he got you know they're looking out for features in their body to point out. I mean, maybe, but it doesn't mean you might not have that too. It's, again, you're judging on physical. You know, they may not have their genealogy, and they might not be trying to doing it, calling themselves abos. Um, but Abo is not a tribe. We guys know that. It's not a tribe. Yeah, there's ancient people, and you got to keep going past that. All right. So who's your people? Which ancient people are your people? You know. It's bigger than just Abo. Yeah, and what part of the world are you an Abo from? That's the other thing. Is, again, many lines, many lines. All right. If you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Um, I don't know if you wanted to like kind of like maybe go over some surnames. Maybe if people put what surname they can go, if they can go past a before 1830 and they know where their surname was in the East Coast, Anu might be able to help you out, maybe possibly, because it's just from doing experience in genealogy. It's not always like 100%, but what tribes they might be connected to. So if you guys want to put that in the chat, I can ask Anu, and he might be able to help you out with that. Like, I know that in the Catawba case, like one of the big ones is Chavers, Evans.
Yep.
I mean, I've seen that just from doing the genealogy so much. I found so many of Anu's cousins, like literally, like
Yeah, too many of them actually.
like first cousin, second cousin, and he didn't know I was talking to him, and I knew they didn't know I was talking to him, and then I'm like, hey, I got somebody who got the exact same genealogy, and then they called each other, and they were cousins.
Yeah, the
They
Shavers,
knew each other.
Chavez. It just kind of depends on how the name was changed. And also remember, don't forget indigenous enslavement. So a lot of people got reclassified because there was something going on. There were people who were prisoners of war. That was just part of the game. When tribes went to war with each other, they would enslave one another, et cetera, and people got reclassified through those means also. So
So we got a couple names here. I don't know if this is pre-1830. Some people didn't put a state, but somebody put Brown. That's it. If you know the state, or if it's, make sure it's pre-1830, or at least the state, so we can know the area. What do you know about the Browns?
yeah, it depends on the geographic location. It depends on the time. So for a lot of people, it's best to do, of course, geographic location, time frame, and surname, because these surnames do transition from place to place. So say, for instance, you can catch a person who is in Virginia, say, for instance, 1829, during the 1829 in Amelia County. Because of that, the surname, the geographic location, the migration pattern is kind of easy, because the name Brown can be Cherokee, it can be Pamunkey, it can be Saponi, it can be Catawba. There's a couple different names. There's a couple different areas that surname transitions, especially in the Virginia areas.
Okay, but you see, now some people want to say, well, I'm Cherokee and they're Brown. They actually might go back to those tribes, actually, right?
Yeah, there could be a possibility that the reason why the term Cherokee was so used is, once again, it was a misnomer, but again, it got you. It was synonymous with the term Indian. So in order to say you were Indian, you would say you were Cherokee. Nobody knew no one knew the other tribe, so you couldn't walk up and be like, "Oh, well, I'm Pamunkey." They wouldn't know what that was. They're like, "Okay, what's that?" But if you said you were Cherokee, people automatically was like, "Okay, you're Indian." Or if you said you were Choctaw, you were automatically Indian, because of course those were the ones that were being pushed out there more. Not saying one way or the other, but reclassification through indigenous recognition, that was kind of one of the ways that things occurred. So some of these surnames do jump from tribe to tribe, and et cetera, et cetera. So geographic location, time, and date generally help out when it comes to finding your ancestors or your tribe.
Yeah, so one good website, you gotta dodge the hijack sometimes, but it's pretty good in general, is House of Names, if you want to know like where it originated in Europe, and possibly who were those Black Europeans that came. Now I do know, and we read this in my book, Jews and Muslims in British Colonial America, that a lot of the Browns were actually Pardo, Portuguese Pardo, Spanish Pardo families who anglicized their name, because Brown, Pardo means brown in Portuguese and Spanish in that time. So a lot of the Pardos, you can Google this, you can research this, became Browns. They anglicized their name to Browns, and that was on the European side. So new names, some of the tribes that possibly might link to the Browns. She said Beaufort, South Carolina, Brown. What do you think?
Yeah, I would have to get a definite date on there. If you can give a date, and hopefully, like I said, it would be pre. The reason why we talk about pre-1830 is because the Indian Removal Act relocated a lot of indigenous people, and not just indigenous people. It relocated a lot of people in general. Just because it was the Indian Removal Act, people of color, Irish people, Scottish people, if they were with family, they got relocated with them. So therefore, some of those names do transition. I hate to keep it so vague. I apologize.
Don't worry. Hey, Rob, if you know any of the names, let the people know, man. So we got Tucker in South Carolina, Josephine, Stone in Halifax. That's Virginia, I guess.
Oh, yeah, Halifax. I got a lot of family from Halifax. Most of the family from Halifax, they were actually Saponis.
Okay.
A huge amount of my family comes from Halifax.
So that's what I'm saying. So a lot of people may not even know that they're Catawba or Saponi or some type of Siouan tribe or Algonquin tribe, and they might be classified eventually as one of the 5 civilized tribes too. And well, let me see, Pulley. You ever heard of the Pulley in North Carolina?
No, not very familiar. Not very familiar.
Patterson.
What years? Because Adderson's an English last name.
Yeah, they didn't give us the location or years. And then we got Million. You guys not giving me the location. Remember, try to go 1830, pre-1830 if you can, and give me a location. If you know the county and everything, even better.
Yeah, that definitely does help out.
We can't do it off names like Rose Burns. I can't just do it like that, like I would have to do the research, and if you want to know specific people and you haven't done your genealogy, I highly recommend you really start your tree, because you started off with you and you work your way up, so by the time you get to those ancestors, you should already kind of know how they connect to you. You'll get hints and everything, especially if you put in the correct information. I recommend it because I think the more people do it, the more it helps other people in the database, and they get better hints and everything. Again, you might have more info than they have, and they might have some info you don't have to connect, one of the ancestors. Right. How about McNabb from North Carolina, Tennessee border?
Oh, McNabb from the North Carolina. Actually, that is a Cherokee name. As much as I hate to admit it, yeah, there are some McNabbs down there who are Cherokee. We got some of them who came up here, and they were Iroquois, and they came into Southern Ohio and became Shawnees. The Shawnee got their recognition of being who they are through the Cherokees. So yeah, that's actually, I actually give credit to that one.
Okay, so Easley and Wright in Ohio, Tennessee, and Georgia. What do you?
Okay, now the Easleys, if you're coming up into Ohio, once again, dates do help out. The only reason I say that is because the Shawnee did have lands here, and they were in Western Ohio. The Shawnees came in here, I think, around the 1500s. So when the Iroquois came, some of your Iroquois tribes came into Ohio and flooded into Virginia also. So looking at those different groups, that's why I tell people it's so important to figure out the migration patterns, because some tribes only stayed in areas for 6, 7, maybe even 10 years. Then they migrated to a different location from pressure and being pushed. So therefore, when it comes to a specific spot, and how long the people were there. So say, for instance, you caught people in Amherst, Virginia, which there was a lot of Gingellskins down there, and there was a lot of the Carmel community down there also. There were also a lot of Melungeons too. So we can't neglect the Melungeon territories that was in Virginia, West Virginia, Ohio, Tennessee, and Kentucky. So we have a lot of Melungeon territories. So there were people mixing and intermingling, and based off specific dates and geographic locations and time frames, even 5 to 10 years can help you pick or figure out exactly who you're related to or how you're related to them. And by following their migration, maybe one family did decide to stay. Say, for instance, my dad's side, like I said, they didn't come up here until they didn't come up to Ohio until the 60s or 70s. I gotta remember. But generally, my mom's side came up here all the way back in the 1700s, and they still come from the same area, Fort Christiana. All their descendants go back to there. So.
All right. So a lot of people didn't, I don't think because they tell me Chicago, I don't think they're going far enough.
Chicago, a lot of people got moved from Mississippi up into Chicago. And then, that once again, that's why it's important to go pre-1830, and if you can, pre-1813.
All right, so that's a good point, because like a lot of the migration patterns, they go from people start off in the South, Mississippi, Alabama, and they go up to Chicago and stuff, in Ohio, or Detroit, or all those areas. But that doesn't mean they originated there, guys. You guys gotta try to go further back. Those surnames might actually come from the east, like eastern East Coast. Like, and in general, when I do genealogy and we get past that barrier in the 1840s and 30s, most families' names you can follow right back into the areas we're looking at on the screen right now. East Coast, Maryland, South Carolina, Georgia, sometimes Florida. But yeah, in general, these areas, Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, so look into that. Some people put, let me see. But yeah, that would be with the Jones and Cook. You got to give us a year. And
yeah, like you were saying, like there's been many times where, you've been doing genealogy and I've been on there with you, where we can find people in Mississippi, and then one generation prior, they're in the Carolinas.
Yeah.
A lot of people relocated for jobs, they relocated for family, they relocated for marriage. So there's numerous reasons to relocate, and some people relocated to, I've seen people who relocated to Texas, So it kind of varies, and then you have to look at the records where, say, for instance, when did Texas become a state? 1845.
I think in the 1840s, yeah.
Yeah, it was like right around the 1840s, and California became a state in the 1850s. Then you look at Western expansion. So some people were going out west just in order to get the freedom that they wanted, and helped out with Western expansion. So again, you do kind of run into those things. Once again, I do apologize for being so vague, but there's a lot of determining factors that created migration patterns based off of the indigenous people, from work to labor, love, freedom, moving to Indian country, etc., etc. But it's generally easier when you go through a person's genealogy and you can hit certain key names, and these key names have progenitors that go back to specific tribes. So it's a little bit easier to figure out there.
Okay, we have let me see. I saw Robinson there, but they're not giving us a location at all. Smalls and Hill, South Carolina. Patterson, Virginia. That's what they're saying. Dantzler, pre-1830, South Carolina. That sounds French to me.
It is.
That might be Huguenot. Dantzler. That might be.
Well, that's like remember the Stewarts. A lot of the Stewarts came over and they were all Irish. So.
Now remember, it doesn't mean when we're saying that's Huguenot that you're 100% Huguenot. I'm not.
No.
That's not what we're saying. So we're just saying you the history and possible, like I don't think anyone knows. You ever done anybody's genealogy that's Dantzler?
No,
Okay, yeah, I haven't either.
I've never ran into that, but I have ran into the name Munson. I see somebody down there saying Munson from Hanover County. A lot of Munsons. If you look on the monkey rolls, there are some Munsons on there.
Okay, Calhoun, South Carolina, or Fawnville, North Carolina.
Oh, that's another tough one. Only because it transitions. The Calhoun family was there when the Calhoun family was there when they started pushing over into. When the Cherokee started pushing over further, because the Carolinas became a melting pot after a certain point. Once the wars were won, you could see that was a melting pot of people from different areas. Say, for instance, the 5 civilized tribes would go into there a lot. It was just kind of a regularity.
How about
Whack-a-Malls, Wakans, and Cape Fear that's still around? It's just going to different names.
How about Williams from Fayetteville, North Carolina? What do you think?
Ooh, I'd have to see the thing with Williams is an Old English name. So I'd have to figure out exactly where that was pointed out, because I do have family who's Whack-a-Mall who they are Williams.
Okay, some Whack-a-Malls have a lot of Whack-a-Malls have Williams. Are known with they're known to be Whack-a-Malls. Okay. Ward in Virginia.
The Wards of Virginia?
Yeah. That's the
I've seen them trans over to a couple, because I know Lumbies who are Wards also.
Okay.
Locklear is another one, because I know a lot of Locklears who they are said to be Lumbies, but I know some of those Locklears do transition, and they intermarried and married with the Chavises back in the 1840s and 1850s. So the list of surnames is so extensive that it's very, very hard, and we have to remember that many of these names do have connotations that go back to other places. Say, for instance, Irish, Scottish, English, German. There's a lot of Germans who came over, and you look at certain names like Morning Star. You look at people who came over and said they were Morning Star, but their name was actually Morgenster. They were Germans who came over and Indianized their name in order to fit into the culture, not to be looked at as badly. There's actually numerous accounts of that where people came over and they Indianized their name just so they wouldn't be basically like ostracized by the community because of where they come from or the time frame. Yeah, wasn't the best thing to come over here during that, wasn't the best thing to come over here as a German during the Holocaust. It wasn't the best thing to come over as an Irish during certain times. So it was easier to Indianize your name and turn it into, once again, Morning Star, a Rising Sun. Sometimes those were connotations for names of people who were from Europe.
I mean, we read a little bit about that in the Black Dutch video I did, how a lot of the Sephardic and Moorish people were being persecuted, a lot of them Huguenots or anything like that. it was better for them to classify, when they married their Indian wife as being part of the tribe, Cherokee, straight up Cherokee. And again, since Cherokee was such a generalized, being applied to many people, it was, they used it. We read that. We know that. You guys know what I'm talking about. Like a lot of people who actually do their genealogy know what I'm talking about. And again, a lot of those people might not be Indians at all. Come to find out, a lot of the chiefs that go back to some of these tribes, civilized or Iroquois, they were half European, half Indian, and we assumed they were 100%. And a lot of people go back to these people and they know what I'm talking about. They just don't emphasize the European part so much. I just want to talk about his Indian, his mom, and not the dad, but yeah. So I mean, it's a lot of names. What I think, you guys, like from what I'm seeing in the chat, a lot of people don't probably know that they have to really try to go back, see what's the origin of that name. So like if you think it originated in that state, like if you're in Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, wherever you are, and you think your name is originated there, you say people's been there since ancient times. What is the history of that? Well, when did you get it? Were you baptized that name? If so, try to prove that at least, try to see if that's an accurate thought, you know. Um,
Also look into the belief systems and the folklore of the area, the times, and the people that you're dealing with. Because the folklore, I don't mean to interrupt you. I apologize, but saw a couple comments, and people really need to look into the folklore and the belief system because that will actually help you out as far as figuring out who was here, what was here at the time. There are legends that tell you numerous beautiful stories about the people that were here, the colors of the people, different things. So I tell people, please don't negate the folklore. Take time, listen, read, find it. To be honest, you'll find giants here. You'll find little people here. You'll find the people of the corn. You'll find a lot of different stuff. So, look into the folklore.
okay, I'm glad you brought that up. So let me just show everybody. So Anu actually has two YouTube channels, and Anu, if you don't know, he has this one, Legends and Folklore. He goes over some great, not just like indigenous or Native American, so-called Native American folklore mythology, but he does scary stories, talks about giants, like, as you guys can see here, changeling, the werewolf, Wendigo, so a lot of good stuff. I like hearing this right before I go to bed. Yeah, it gets pretty scary sometimes, especially with his voice and stuff and the music he puts on, but very interesting. This is his other channel. Let me show you guys a new breed. Actually, that's Chris White. A new breed. Yeah, I watch Chris White. He's entertaining. A new breed. Um, Chris White, if you guys don't know, he's the basketball player, the street ball. He's a pretty funny guy. Um, yeah. So you can see here turtle creation story and a lot of folklore. What would you say? What's the more what's important about folklore? Just give us like a quick speech about that. Why are you saying it's important?
Folklore gives you a look back into what the ancients believed, what the ancients saw. The folklore became part of the folklore and the stories became part of their everyday life because it explained things that you couldn't necessarily read or write at the time. Because they weren't taking pictures and they weren't necessarily sitting there reading whole books, that folklore became a part of everyday life. So when you look at the story of corn, when you look at the story of how stories were made or why the wolf howls at the moon, these are more than just stories. This is a look at their everyday life, things that were passed down word for word, things that were shared with children, things that were able to give people messages, So for me, it transitioned, folklore transitions age and time. That's my personal opinion. Folklore will transition age and time, and it doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are. There's always a message in folklore, and once again, it's what the people saw back then. We probably can't imagine what somebody saw 2,000 years ago, but if you hear their stories and their folklore, it'll automatically put you in a mind frame where you can close your eyes and rewind time and see what they saw, give you a little input into who they were, what they were around. So to me, sorry for rambling, but that's why folklore was important.
Yeah, no problem, man. So yeah, if you guys enjoy it, I mean, I enjoy hearing the stories. You learn so much. There's a reason why they told the stories a certain way. They knew that, with telling it like a story, it would last longer, you know. it will last longer, and hear it out. Learn about your tribe's folklore and mythology. A lot of people say they're this and that. They don't know nothing about the tribe. They don't know nothing about who their people is. Even when they say Cherokee, what is the Cherokee mythology or folklore? What is all that? Where's it really coming from, the origin? Study that. Anu goes into that also. He's actually a very good prepper. And when it comes to survival, when it comes to shit hitting the fan, Anu's not one of the guys who's gonna be panicking. All right, so if you want to learn some tips, prep and survival, he has a couple videos here on the new Breed channel, right?
Right.
Yeah, ask him any questions you have about that. He's literally self-sufficient, living off grid in the city. Like he does, you don't have to be out in the woods to do that. You can do it right where
No.
you are. And it's very important, to prep. Very important, especially in these times. That's what our ancestors did. They prepped all summer for the winter. Some of them, and it's the same thing. But you know, I think you guys will gain a lot of understanding of what you should do and what you shouldn't do in case certain scenarios happen. It'll help you not think about in a stressful way, and maybe think about it like, well, I'm gonna be prepared, if this happens or this happens. It's never a bad thing to know this stuff, man. I think like knowing how to survive in certain situations is really good for you. So as you guys can see, prepper stuff, you're gonna find all kinds of stuff here. Anu's very knowledgeable of this stuff, so take advantage. Anything you wanted to talk about, like other than maybe we didn't mention today, Anu?
Actually, man, nah, this has been pretty decent. It's been pretty decent. I definitely did enjoy, and nah, like I said, we can keep going, dude. Because I'm into the folklore. The one thing I do want to explain to people, and one thing that's real big to me about the folklore, and I want people to know about this, is look into the three creations. I don't have a video on it, but I have to make one. No, wait, I think I do on the A Do Breed channel. But there were three creations: one of stone, one of wood, and the last, which one we're in now, it's corn. Has anybody ever wondered and sat down and looked why Indian corn is the four colors of humans? The original Indian corn has white, yellow, red, and black. So when you really sit down and look at that from that standpoint, understand that, look into that creation story when you get some time.
Okay. Yeah. So you want me to play it or something, or do you have it?
Let's actually see if it's on there. If it's not, I'll actually make the video on it.
Yeah, definitely something for anybody who's subscribed to look forward to. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do. Anu just got his all office home space ready to start producing a lot of good folklore, mythology, and even ghost stories, haunted places. Like he's gonna go in on all this stuff, Irish mythology from all over the world too. And even their ghost stories and things like that. So it's very entertaining to me. I mean, once you hear it, the quality too, it's just pretty cool, man, because you just kind of zone out into the story. All right, so yeah, I recommend it. Yeah, I mean, covered a lot. We didn't really get as deep as because we want to keep it like this, but we just wanted people to have time to think about that. There's always another side of the story. It's not just 5 civilized tribes. You know, there was tribal warfare here, and unfortunately, tribes did pick sides with certain European allies they made, and those people were warring with other Europeans, and so people would choose who to fight with, and whoever convenience them, and in their situation, who's the lesser evil, I guess, if you want to say it. But
yeah, look at the attacks on the three fronts. You had the Spanish coming from the south, English coming from the east, and the French who were coming through Canada from the north. So
yeah, it's one thing to think about. Like when I mean, they were warriors, but when have you really heard extensively of Siouan invaders? The Siouan invaders.
Nah, dog, it don't happen. It don't. I ain't even gonna lie.
I want you guys to pay attention to what I'm saying right now. because these are a lot of these people were the ones being enslaved and reclassified, and along with the Algonquin tribes that were in the East Coast. A lot of the Powhatan is kind of like, we've learned today they might be not from Mexico, but they were speaking Algonquin dialect. Somehow they learned it, but they might actually be from South America. But a lot of these people that we never heard of, these tribes, these are the ones being reclassified. A lot of them were indentured to the five civilized tribe people. A lot of them were family they married and assimilated with. A lot of them were just servants they had, and they were adopted. Um, and these were the East Coast tribes. A lot of them Siouan tribes. A lot of you have Siouan blood and you don't know it. A lot of you assume Siouan is Mongol only. A lot of you have a lot of stereotypes and prejudices, and that's okay. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. It's just kind of getting past that, though, and having respect. And actually, if you don't know if you're right, then you shouldn't even say it, because that's just like you're just judging. You're just being judgmental, honestly. Just like your ancestors were being judged, for physical looks or for whatever they people were saying they were. Don't do the same thing to others. Don't judge a book by its cover. And yeah, we do know that there was hijacks and infiltrators in many ways, not just from Asia, from Europe too. And I just want to say this: you guys got to really understand, it wasn't just so-called white people paying $5. A lot of black Europeans did too. A lot of black Europeans paid $5 to join the five civilized tribes. All right. It's easy to blame everything on the evil white man and say, "Oh, poor us and poor us," but you got to understand it's in your bloodline, both sides, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Nobody is exempt from this. Show me you're 100% and be real about it. You're not. Like, you be real. And there was always a story there. Somebody knew, or some grandma knew, or some grandpa knew that, oh, we're German, or we're Irish, we're Scottish. But before, we always assumed that meant like, oh, I'm part white or I'm part, and that wasn't it. There's a lot of these Europeans were actually black folks that were falling in love, assimilating, having families with American indigenous people. You know, so something that you think about is family. So that name is yours too. It's not just something you adopted or was given to you. You know. So I think in this community though, we're pretty respectful in this community based on the general comments I get and just the likes and the positive feedback I get. A lot of people understand what I'm saying. Some people pretend to, I'll be honest, some people pretend to, and then you think they're understanding, and then they're just questioning you. When you get to talk to them, they're just questioning me. But how this? And I can tell they're not watching or really paying attention to the videos, or just stuck on something, just want to, be stuck on something. And that's okay. Like, nobody's forced to believe anything. Don't believe me. Don't believe Anu. Go ahead and verify the information. Verify it, because it seems like I said earlier. When have you really heard of Sioux invaders? You got the Iroquois. We know that. We know how they moved. A lot of the five civilized tribes. We know that's historic. We know how they moved too. You guys, you gotta acknowledge this stuff. And who were they doing that to? What tribes were they doing that to? And why? Who were these people anciently? Now we're going into a whole different thing here, and this is for future videos, and it gets deep and controversial. But who were these people anciently? Why were they beefing with certain tribes and confederating with others? And shout out to Drop Nation, King Drop. He did some great videos, man. He did some great videos explaining this. The more and more war, more and more war. He literally told you, he's showing you how while some tribes are being slaughtered, others are making treaties at the same time in the same location. All black folks. So who's picking? Who's really writing the story? Remember? You guys know the saying that the ones who win write the story. Again, what makes somebody a civilized tribe, and what makes the other tribe not civilized or savage? And was it just a bigger agenda behind that? And why were certain tribes so friendly with certain Europeans? Was there an ancient connection there? With trade, whether it was trade or family or blood, and yes, there was, and that's what I'm trying to tell you guys. It's very deep. It doesn't just start when Europeans got here. You know, it goes way more back, and something to keep your mind open about, and just, you know that there's other tribes out there and they have a history and a story too, and they're the ones who never get to tell their story, and they're the ones who just go off Cherokee and Blackfoot a lot of the time, and that's all they were told to do. Like Anu will tell you, was it okay? I knew that there was a time you were telling me that you couldn't claim Indian. Can you explain that?
Oh yeah, yeah, that happened a lot. It depended on the location you were at. There were many times you couldn't claim you were Indian because either one, it was a misnomer, or two, you were actually pretty much the community around you didn't like if you said you were indigenous or Indian or anything like that, and it was just a lot of people were tortured for it. Not tortured in the sense of tortured to death, but even the community, they would tell you, oh, you're not proud of your African ancestry, you're not proud of your African heritage, and you were ostracized by the community for claiming you were Indian. I was always proud about it. So you learn being ostracized, and during the African American movement, when people said they were African American and they got into specific cultures, like due to unfortunate circumstances, I've heard stories of even family member getting their hair cut off because they were claiming that they were indigenous and they would cut their hair. So it was just something that occurred. You know, and it was kind of a tough time. Now it's more accepting. People they're a little more open with their indigenous culture and heritage. People are starting to wake up and understand that, of course, all people of a specific skin tone aren't the exact same or come from the same geographic location. So therefore, it seems like times are getting easy with the invent of the internet and the knowledge, like the knowledge you're spreading, and it helps out a lot. You know.
Hmm. Yeah. So again, I'm not gonna ramble no more. Just hopefully people understood part of the message today, on a spiritual sense, in a spiritual way, like, just let go, stop the war, stop the prejudice, like, stop pointing fingers, like, know thyself before you worry about others, know thyself truly, and again, this information ain't personal. This is not personal. And it's fine to disagree, and no one is forcing you to be here and watch this and sit down and troll and get mad and swear and, and get kicked out of the chat and say things, like a child, like you're in elementary school, like schoolyard, where words hurt me. When I used to take it personal when I was like 9 years old. I used to get mad when somebody said, "Hey man, you're light skinned man," and I used to just fight and beat up people and stuff. But I learned, they're the ones with the problem. I gotta help them. That's how I see people like that. And sometimes I just want to say, we all, whether past what we think we are, we kind of act out our nature of who we are without even knowing it. If you're constantly in war, you're constantly fighting with people, you're trying to debate people, you're trying to do all this stuff, it might be for a reason. All right. You come with love and you come with respect, and we just connect right away on a spiritual level, on an ancestral level. That's because we family. Don't matter what you look like, and what I look like. Again, all kinfolk ain't kinfolk, and just like everybody in Costa Rica is not my people. Everybody in Costa Rica is not my people. It's a melting pot here too. All right. Shout out to my distant cousins like Anu and the Catawba brothers. I strongly feel like the Siouans are distant cousins, you know, of a lot of the Central American tribes. When you're talking about the ancient, people of Ohio who are like the stock of the Siouan tribes are coming from. And a lot, again, they were trading with Central America. We see that a lot of the mythology the same, a lot of the pottery, the artifacts. Me and Anu discussed it so many ways. Shout out to War Chief Red Lion who's in the chat. He knows what I'm talking about. We distant cousins too. He knows what I'm saying. We talk all the time, and he knows his people, where they coming from, and he knows all his lines, and even the European ones and their history and stuff like that. But knowing thyself truly without being prejudiced and racist and yeah, and just trying to be superior than other people and debate people just because you don't agree without no information or genealogy. That just makes you look foolish. you know But yeah, thanks for tuning in today, guys. All right. Thanks for tuning in. We're gonna leave with this beat right here. It's really nice. This beat is called Never Surrender. And that's what happened. We never surrendered, you know. I knew, I knew, represents his heritage. Honestly, I'm not gonna throw shots, but like from him and his circle, yeah, I see them represented a lot. I see a lot of people that don't really understand their history. They're part of the tribe more, or affiliated with the tribe more. They might take disrespectful that we actually including them in this, but it's funny, but it is what it is, and he knows who his ancestors are, besides who's here modern times running things. You guys don't focus on that. Like, why are you mad at people that don't know anything either? These people don't know. A lot of the people don't know the history. The people you're blaming don't even know the history. They're just as ignorant as we all were. By getting mad and shouting at them and fighting with them doesn't really help. Help them understand what you're trying to say. There's a different way to reach people. And I try to set the example by coming with information, not just with words and feelings and my opinions and thoughts, but let you decide based on the information what we're reading. And yeah, I can have my biases, my personal opinions, because that's normal human nature. But a lot of the stuff you can just verify the information we present. And again, shout out to everybody that helps me out with the information. Again, it's been a long time since I've been live, and I'll tell you why. It's because every time I went live, they're cutting me off, they're not letting me monetize, they're finding some copyright thing, they're making my stream cut or fall or some weird thing. They cut up a part, blacken it out, censor it. So it's just I try not to go live anymore, and it seems to work out most of the time like that. But I'm glad I was able to do this today, and I actually might be back tomorrow with another Kurimeo meditation with somebody else who's been wanting to get on. If he's watching, he knows who he is, so get ready if you're watching for tomorrow. All right, another little surprise here. Try to do more of these Kurimeo meditations. If you want to be on and tell your story, make sure though that you actually have the story, it for sure. It's not like when I'm asking the questions and you may not be able to answer, you got to research it, or you don't know that. I don't mind not knowing, but if you're going to come on, make sure that we come with some value, some real sources, and some things we can actually verify, not just what you're saying. So come contact me if you want to tell your story, who you are, who your people are, where they're from, anything, any kind of projects, anything like that you think would be interesting and helpful for the community. Let me know, or something that you think they would want to hear or know about. So again, shout out to Anu too for being and coming, making the time, and just letting it just telling it how it is, man. Like it's you got your history and everybody else has their history, and not everybody's from the same tribe or nation, and it's okay. It's all right. So thanks for coming on, man. Make sure to subscribe to both his channels so you don't miss a thing. He's gonna come with a lot of videos. I already told me all the ones he's gonna do, so I know they're gonna be good. Shout out to everybody in the chat, all the real ones, my moderators, thank you, all the Patreons, for the support. And anybody who just supports, doesn't have to be financially, just in any way. Appreciate you guys. It's been wonderful. We're gonna keep coming strong. If you don't see me for a while, it's because I'm either busy helping people with genealogy or doing something with the fam or working on other projects, but I'm always working on a video in the background, and who knows, I'm working on this and this, and how long that take you? 3 or 4 days? I'm like, yeah, and he sends me a lot of info. He sent me the info about yesterday from Rachel and Bud, that was his ancestor. So I was like, cool, man, I'm going to talk about that and add some other ones and add a documentary to that, just to show that is history. It's real history. It's many cases, not just one case, All right. So again, thanks for tuning in. Much love and respect. All right. I'm going to turn off the video now real quick. Thanks for tuning in. Much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. Pura vida. Anything you want to say, New, before you go?
I just want to thank everybody for, of course, thank you for letting me come on, but I want to thank everybody else for the love. There's a lot of good vibes in the room. I'm real thankful for that, and the fact that people are very accepting to hear the story. So, None but respect and love. And once again, thanks for having me on. I salute everybody in the chat. To all my Okie no Spay, y'all know what's up. Y'all have a good one.
That's what's up. Just real quick before we go, I have a news ancestor right here. His name is Benjamin Perry Harris of the Catawba tribe. This is from 1898. And he got his dinner right there. A news direct ancestor. All right, from the Harris family.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying, man, once again, thank y'all. Thanks for showing the rallies. It's all to the good, man. Greatly appreciated. You want to have me on again soon.
Yeah, I think we didn't, it's something I just remember we didn't cover, but we're going to save it for next time. You know, a lot of people who also like, you know, relate to the scripture and know that you're the book, you know, past religions and all that. I know he's very knowledgeable in scripture, so we're going to have a session with him on that. So I look forward to that as well. So again, thanks for tuning in. And again, we're going to do a pull-up. This beat's too fire, man. We're going to do a pull-up, all right? Pull up! Wow, much love and respect.